actually a topic that I speak to so many people about, and actually one of my most viewed videos on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, is do you get cold hands and feet? And so many people think it's just down to the time of year, but cold hands and feet could actually be a sign that your brain is not performing as effectively as you want it to, as it needs to be that high achieving person and to drive and push you towards your goals. Not only this, if your brain isn't performing the way you need it to, what about the rest of your body? Maybe you see signs that you're waking up through the night or you can't get to sleep, you wake up groggy. Maybe you're getting brain fog or low energy throughout the day. Maybe it's that you struggle to drop weight when you really want to push to drop and get that fat off. Maybe it's that there's thyroid problems going on. Maybe there's issues with menopause. Maybe if you're a guy, there's testosterone issues, just simply low motivation and drive and just not having to get up and go. How is this linked with cold hands and feet? Well, when I do my client onboarding, it's a very intense, I say intense, in depth onboarding process where we have multiple questionnaires, and one specific questionnaire is on your brain health. Now, I've been told that this questionnaire, this whole client onboarding process is massively in depth. And there's a reason for that. Working as a functional medicine doctor, I want to make sure that I get to the bottom of the problem quicker, sooner rather than later, so we can start fixing that. We don't want to guess with these things. It's your health we're playing with. We don't want to guess with that. So we have these questionnaires. And this brain health questionnaire, which is also part of my health screening, which you can actually get on a standalone product, is really in depth. And the first section that it goes through is on circulation. And they ask questions like, do you have low brain endurance, or do you have poor focus and concentration? Maybe you have signs of ADHD or things like that. Do you need to exercise or drink coffee or caffeine in order to improve your brain function? Do you get cold hands and feet? Do you have poor nail health or fungal growth? Do you need to wear socks at night? Have you got white nail beds instead of pink? And does the tip of your nose get cold? Don't want to look down when I do that. I'll go cross-eyed. But these are massive signs that your brain isn't getting the oxygen it needs, the blood flow it needs, which carries that oxygen to your brain to actually get it to clear out, to get it to get oxygen delivery. If there is poor circulation in the brain, that means poor nutrient delivery. And it actually then means that your neurons need oxygen to create energy. So there will be low energy creation within the brain. And if you have things like low brain endurance, maybe it's that you have this low brain endurance, but you're trying to get on with a project. Maybe you're going through a launch. Maybe you're going through some meetings. You're going through some interviews and you just cannot concentrate. You're trying to do a course and you cannot concentrate. So you get more and more frustrated. You get more and more wound up. So what can you actually do? Then what happens if you need to exercise in order to get good brain function? But on that day that you have this 10 calls back to back or 6, 7 calls back to back, and you haven't got time to exercise, what can you do? Well, we can go and have the caffeine, but then what if you're super sensitive to caffeine and you can't actually then get to sleep and wind down afterwards? We then end up taking the upper, then the downer. It can be very, very detrimental to just deal with it. Then the cold hands and feet side of things. When we look at cold hands and feet, these are at the extremes of your body. Now, as I've said, we need oxygen to be delivered in the blood to actually get round to our organs and to get round to our brain. Now, hands and feet at the extremes of our body, they have gravity to help them. Our brain at the other extreme of our body, it does not have gravity to help it. In fact, it's going against it. So we can't get enough good oxygenated blood to our brain, which becomes a problem. And then poor nail health or fungal growth. I see so many people, not just nails, but also putting things on their skin. Skin is an organ as well, because of things that are going on inside. If your nails are very brittle or you're constantly getting athlete's foot fungal growth, then we need to look at blood flow, because blood flow there is going to take away like rubbish, basically, that we need to get rid of and detoxify. And that's one of the ways that we do it. Wearing socks at night. yes, like sometimes it may well be cold in the winter, but if you're constantly having to wear socks, then that's where we need to look a little bit deeper into what else is going on in the body. Then we can do things like a capillary refill test, where you have your pinks of the nails, and if you're not really going to be able to see it, no, not really going to work. But if you push, it should go back pretty quickly from white to pink. And if it takes a while to do that, a second or two, then we've not got the oxygen delivery that we need to. And then finally, as we've said there, do you get a cold tip or the nose? And this is where we need to look a little bit deeper into things like blood pressure, things like anemia, stress levels, nitric oxide delivery, in order to see what we can actually do to improve these. Now, as soon as we talk about blood pressure, in fact, I have a new client who signed up a few weeks back, and the post she saw was that low blood pressure, talking about low blood pressure and how, why do people not worry about low blood pressure? We see all this talk about high blood pressure, and yes, high blood pressure, increased risk of stroke and cardiovascular disease and stress and all these things going on. But low blood pressure to me tells me there is also something going on. Someone may be getting lightheaded. And if we've got low blood pressure, chances are then, again, we're not going to be able to get those nutrients around the body as we need. Then we're going to see problems with deficiencies that happen. Then we're going to see problems with brain fog, low mental endurance, more frustration, lower moods, depression, anxiety, all these things that come along with not being able to get nutrients there or to clear out rubbish that is going on. So what actually happens, like our blood pressure, ideally, like when we look at systolic and dystolic, the upper and lower should be 120/80. If it's 10, 15 either way on each of them, then we're looking at abnormal blood pressure. And it frustrates me that so many people don't look at low blood pressure when it is such a big thing going on. And what is actually causing that? An oxygen delivery? Is it that someone's smoking a lot? Is it that they've got loads of toxins around and they're not getting good air quality? Is it that they're shallow breathing a lot, highly stressed, all these things that actually happen? Is it their diet, poor blood glucose management? And then we look into high blood pressure, as we've said, but also things like anemia. When I get a client on board, I like to look at a complete blood count, a CBC, and to see what their RBC, their red blood cell count is, and see, is it high, is it low, is it where we want it to be? So many times people don't have good RBC levels and the red blood cell levels. Now, in those red blood cells, we actually have oxygen that goes in there, not just having the right size of red blood cell or amount of red blood cells, but the right size. Is there RDW, their red cell distribution, actually going to be different? So they have big blood cells and then low blood cells and medium blood cells. We want them all to be consistent, all to be getting the right levels of oxygen to the right places as quickly as possible. So I like to look at these CBCs and look at the RBC, MCV, MCH, MCHC, and RDW to look at what is going on with distribution. Are we breaking down red blood cells? Are we producing them, or are we losing them somewhere? Maybe it's that you have heavy periods, or maybe you've got an intestinal bleed or something like that. And we have to look a little bit more into that, because that absolutely can then be impacting on your oxygen delivery and impacting on your brain health and everything else that's going on. Then other things happen. I've seen people that have shown up as anemic because of autoimmune conditions, but a big one is because of overtraining. And this happens a lot more to endurance athletes than it does necessarily to strength athletes. I'm not saying it doesn't happen to strength athletes, but it happens a lot more. I've seen it with endurance athletes. When I used to work with professional endurance athletes doing Ironmans or Ultramans or marathons and in the Olympics, that they had extreme training protocols, and some of them would show as anemic. And we had to look at nutritional interventions in order to help them and really make the most of what we do in the off season when we can take a little bit of a backload from training. And we look into these sorts of things. Then they're looking at the nitric oxide delivery. Now, nitric oxide, we talk about that. It's something that always reminds me of Fast and Furious. Get your NOS going. But in your body, we need it for communicating with your nervous, your immune, and your vascular systems. And we need to get the right type, because there are 3 types of NOS. You don't need to know this. I don't know why I'm telling you it, but there's inducible NOS, which is pro-inflammatory. We don't want that one. Then there's endothelial NOS, which is great for glucose management. It's great for dilating your blood vessels and great for activating energy in the brain. And then there's neuronal NOS, which optimizes your focus. So we want endothelial and we want neuronal NOS to be high, and we want inducible NOS to be low. How do we do that? We look at exercise. We look at things like high intensity interval training, getting your heart rate up. And this is going to be different on the person. Someone could actually get their heart rate up to induce NOS, just by going up a hill, walking it. Someone will need to sprint. But I've had someone just literally do one sprint or one little jog for 20 seconds each day to help them with their blood flow. It's about doing enough that you can recover from, have good heart rate variability the next day, another sign of stress on the body, and then do it again. Those are the basic minimums where I want to work with people. Then we get into stress. Then we get into oxygenation, because the more stressed we are over high periods of time, that then actually means that our body gets used to it. So it goes into this state of stress quicker. And the mid part of our brain actually recognizes it. So it takes less stress to get into this stressful state. As a result, we then get stressed out easier, which means we get more brain fog, we get less oxygen delivery. And when we are stressed, this decreases the supply of oxygen to our organs. But it's all well and good, as I've said in different things, that about stress and stop stressing, but we have to recognize what causes this stress, because we have physical stress and we have emotional stress. The psychological aspect of feeling good and hitting our purpose and feeling like we're doing some good is great, but some people don't have that. So this psychological pressure, this stress that's going on our body, is it in our job? Is it in relationships? Is it financial? All these psychological stresses. Then we have the physiological stresses that come from our environment, come from the food that we eat, come from the training that we do, maybe not doing enough training. It comes from mold and toxins that we have all around us. We're never going to get rid of these toxins, but it's there. We need to recognize it. So many people have mold, and especially in the wintertime, mold becomes prevalent. And we have poor air quality. I've got an air filtration system down here. I've got one in the living room, one in the bedroom, a HEPA air filter. We need to have these to actually have good quality air in our actual homes, especially in countries where we don't open the windows as much because it's just freezing. And we need to look at that. We need to recognize that. Then we look at quality of food. Are we having food which actually causes us to have poor blood glucose management, high levels of sugar, low levels of sugar, all these things? And as a result, all this cocktail comes up to have a whole high level of stress. And lets me ask that question, is your brain performing optimally? In fact, not even optimally. Is your brain performing at all? Or do you constantly see these signs of it not performing? Cold hands and feet, poor focus, poor memory, just constantly not able to stick to a plan when it comes onto your nutrition. And how can you improve this? Well, if you are one person that wants to improve their health, then drop me a message and we can talk about one-to-one side of things. But these topics are absolutely going to be places where I focus on a lot and take a lot of questions on in my program, the Revitalization Blueprint. If you want more information of that, go to revitalizationblueprint.com. And if you want $50 off per month right now, as we start the program, it's $50 off per month with the code FOUNDER. And it will only be for this week. Then we will take that code away. And we start the call, first live Q&A call this evening. We have a training every 2 weeks. We have a live call every 2 weeks. Any information you want on that, drop me a message and we will talk further. Hopefully, this has given you some awareness as to how is your brain performing? And then we look at what can we do to improve that. Any questions, hit me up.